All right, so you know those royal stories that just kind of pop up and you're like, oh, another one.
Yeah, yeah.
But every now and then there's one that makes you stop and think.
Right.
This whole thing with Prince Harry back in the UK at the Court of Appeal for a second day now.
Oh,
It's not just some fleeting visit. This is serious stuff. He's fighting to have his full British security detail back, like the whole shebang whenever he sets foot in the UK.
that's interesting. It makes you think about what it really means to step back from royal life.
Right.
You're kind of in this in-between space. He's not a working royal. He's living a different life overseas.
Right.
But when he comes back, the question of security and who's responsible for it gets really complicated.
It really does. I mean,
Hmm.
think about it. For years, as a working royal, he had that top-tier protection 24/7.
Of course, yeah.
British police, the whole work. That's the kind of security you get when you're backed by the government.
Right.
But when he and Meghan decided to step back in 2020 and, make that move to the US, everything changed.
Things had to be reevaluated.
Yeah, it wasn't automatic anymore. His security became a case-by-case thing, decided each time he visited. And now he's actually challenging a ruling from last year from the High Court.
Oh,
They basically said that scaling back his security was A-okay.
so that's what this is all about. He's not happy with that decision.
Not one bit. So today, in our deep dive, what we really want to unpack for you is why he's so adamant about this now. Like, why is this such a big deal for him?
I'm curious, too.
What are the arguments from both sides, and what's the bottom line here?
Yeah, let's get into it.
We've got all these news reports that are breaking down what's happening in the courtroom, so we're going right to the source.
Excellent.
No speculation, just the facts.
Just thinking about it, the obvious question is, what exactly is Harry's argument here?
That's a great place to start.
It might seem like it's just about, I want my bodyguards back. But I feel like there's got to be more to it than that.
You hit the nail on the head. He and his legal team are basically saying that private security, the kind you or I might hire, it's just not enough for someone like him.
Right, right.
And they've got a point. Under British law, those private security guys, they can't carry guns. That's a huge difference right there.
Yeah, that's a major factor.
But even bigger than that, they don't have access to the government's intelligence and security networks. Think about all the information that's shared, the potential threats that are monitored.
That's a whole other level of security.
For Harry, that lack of official connection, that insider knowledge, means he and his family are vulnerable when they're in the UK.
I can see why that would be a concern. And what about the government? How are they responding to all this?
Well, they're not just brushing him off, if that's what we're thinking.
No, of course not. But they have to have some kind of counter-argument.
They do, and it's interesting. Their legal representative is saying that the security setup they've had since 2020, it's not just some off-the-shelf package, it's bespoke. That's the word they're using.
Bespoke. Okay, so tailored specifically for him.
Exactly. Flexible, they say, tailored to Harry's new circumstances. They're essentially saying, we took his new life into account. He's not a working royal anymore. He lives abroad. This is what's appropriate.
It makes you wonder, though, if they have this custom-made security plan for him.
Right.
Why is Harry pushing so hard to go back to the old system? What's driving him?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. His legal team is actually saying that this whole downgrade, this whole security shift, it was a major reason why he and Meghan decided to move to the U.S. in the first place.
Wow, so it wasn't just about wanting a fresh start or anything like that.
It seems like security was a huge deciding factor. Think about that. A life-altering decision, influenced by how safe they felt.
That definitely puts things into perspective. It's one thing to say you're concerned about security. It's another thing to actually uproot your life and move across an ocean.
You got it. And it becomes even more relatable when you factor in his kids, Archie and Lilibet. He wants them to feel safe when they visit the UK. I mean, come on, any parent can relate to wanting to protect their children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it kind of shifts the focus too, right?
In what way?
It's not just about Harry anymore. It's about his whole family.
It's about the safety and well-being of young children.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a second and really dig into the legal side of this. What's Harry's team putting forward in this appeal? What are their main points?
Well, they're arguing that Harry was unfairly singled out. Basically, they're saying he's been treated differently from other royals who might have different security arrangements. Their claim is that he's getting inferior treatment without a good reason.
So it's not just about the level of security itself.
No.
It's about the fairness of the decision.
Exactly. They're questioning the process, the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
His lawyer brought up a really important point. They claim that the government body, the one in charge of making these security decisions, didn't follow protocol.
What do you mean?
They didn't get a full expert threat assessment before downgrading Harry's protection. That's a big deal. From Harry's point of view, it looks like the whole process was mishandled.
I can see why he'd be upset. It sounds like he's saying they jumped the gun, didn't do their due diligence.
That's exactly what they're arguing.
That's a serious accusation.
It is. But to be fair, the government's not taking this lying down. They're saying that Harry and his legal team are giving a very limited picture of what actually went into those security decisions.
Okay, so there's more to the story.
That's what they're claiming. They're saying there's a whole bunch of information and intelligence that Harry's leaving out that was considered when they made their decision. So it's a bit of a he said, she said situation.
We're only seeing one side of the coin, and the government's saying there's another side we need to see.
Right. And to back up their claim that Harry needs top-notch security, his lawyers brought up some really concerning examples of threats he's faced.
Yeah, this is where it gets really heavy. What did they highlight?
They brought up a report from 2020, a call from al-Qaeda for his assassination. I mean, that's chilling.
Absolutely terrifying.
And then there were the threats from neo-Nazi groups and other extremists.
It's scary to think that's something he has to deal with.
But it's not just these larger-scale threats. They also talked about incidents with paparazzi, really aggressive encounters.
Oh, right. I remember hearing about those.
One in London in 2021, another in New York just last year. It really highlights the constant pressure he's under.
And those paparazzi incidents, they hit different, don't they? You can't help but think about what happened to his mother.
Absolutely. It's impossible to ignore that context. The tragic death of Princess Diana, that car crash while being chased by paparazzi, it's a constant shadow looming over all of this.
It's a heartbreaking reminder of the real dangers involved. It makes his concerns about his family's safety that much more understandable.
I can only imagine the weight of that history, the anxiety it must bring up.
So with all this going on, what's the public reaction been like in the UK?
Well, from the news reports I've seen, it seems like opinion is pretty divided, which is understandable given the complexity of the situation.
Yeah, it's not a simple issue.
Not at all. They interviewed some people outside the Royal Courts of Justice, and you had folks who were firmly on Harry's side.
Saying what?
Saying he absolutely has the right to security for himself and his family, especially with the threats he's facing. You can't really argue with that.
That's a valid point. And what about the other side?
Well, the counter-argument is that he chose to step back from royal duties. He's living in the U.S. now. So the question is, should he still get the same level of security paid for by British taxpayers?
I can see where they're coming from.
Some people feel like by stepping away, he kind of gave up that automatic right to full protection.
It's a tough one. It really raises questions about what the state owes him, if anything, now that his role has changed.
Yeah, it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
So let's say Harry wins this appeal. What happens next?
Well, based on what his legal team has said, he and his family might start visiting the UK more often. They've made it clear that security was a big reason for moving to California.
Right. They basically said it was a deal breaker.
Exactly. So if this appeal goes his way and those security concerns are addressed, it could open the door for more trips back home.
That would definitely change things. It would affect the dynamics within the royal family and how much we see him in public.
Definitely. It would be a significant shift.
And what's the next step in this whole legal process?
We're just waiting now. The Court of Appeal will issue their decision, but they haven't said when. It could be a while.
So just to recap everything for you, we've been talking about Prince Harry's legal battle to get his full UK security back. His main argument is that private security just doesn't cut it. It doesn't have the authority or the intelligence access that government protection offers.
Yeah.
This all goes back to when he stepped back as a working royal and moved to the US. His team's basically saying that security was a driving force behind that move.
Yeah.
We looked at his legal arguments, how he feels unfairly treated, how the government supposedly didn't follow the proper procedures, and of course the government's pushing back, saying they've got a bespoke system in place, that they considered everything.
Right.
And let's not forget those security threats he's faced, especially with the tragedy of his mother's death. It's a huge concern. Public opinion in the UK is divided, and if Harry wins, we might see him and his family back in the UK more often. But for now, we wait for the court's decision.
You know, listening to all of this, it makes you think.
About what?
When you have people in the public eye, people who might be at risk, and their lives change drastically, how do we balance their need for protection with what the state is responsible for? It's a really complicated question.
It really is. There's no easy answer.
Not at all.
Food for thought.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us today for this deep dive. Until next time.
Bye, everyone.